Hello, you're watching BBC World News. I'm James Menendez. Our top story this hour. For the first time, America and its regional allies are carrying out airstrikes in Syria against Islamic State militants. The Pentagon has confirmed that the US military and its allies have launched cruise missiles and used fighter jets and bombers from the region, and the operation is ongoing. A very warm welcome to the programme. And in another development on this story, Islamic State fighters have forced tens of thousands of Syrian Kurds to flee into Turkey. The government there says it can't cope. Many people are living in makeshift shelters, in mosques and schools. But first, the Pentagon has confirmed that for the first time, the US is bombing Islamic State targets in Syria. It says the operation by the American military, together with its regional allies, is still going on, involving fighter jets, bombers and missiles. US officials said that Arab nations had been taking part, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain and Qatar. European nations are not thought to be involved. President Obama authorized the latest round of airstrikes on Monday. The United States has been carrying out strikes against Islamic State militants in Iraq since August. The BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher is in Washington and said the administration hadn't released much information so far.
The military operation is still ongoing, so the Pentagon has essentially confirmed that it's happening and that it's happening from multiple sources: fighter jets, bombers, cruise Tomahawk missiles from naval ships, and that it's doing so, it's carrying out the operation in conjunction with partners, it said. We have not got any official confirmation, but American media is reporting that these include Arab nations, 5 Arab nations, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Jordan, although it's not clear on what roles they are actually fulfilling, and that should become clear a little bit later in the day. Again, according to reports, we understand that the operation began around 12:30 GMT, just past midnight GMT, and there was a 90-minute wave of attacks, paused, but then the attacks seem to be continuing now for a while. Multiple targets. One U.S. official has been quoted as saying up to 20 targets, and these are command and control centers or buildings used as command and control, weapons supplies, military depots, and that sort of thing. And from reports, it seems that the targets are focusing on the Islamic State's headquarters in the city of Raqqa and also along the border. Again, various details we're getting from Facebook and Twitter posts. Some of the targets in Raqqa city include the Army Recruitment Center, the post office. There's other places hit in eastern Aleppo, western Aleppo, near the Euphrates Dam. Reports that Islamic State fighters in Raqqa city, but also in Deir el-Zur, are fanning out, abandoning their headquarters, heading towards rural areas, dispersing so that they're not as easy targets. This looks like it will be continuing now for a few more hours before we get official confirmation of what exactly the military operation has achieved.
Barbara, I mentioned that, of course, the United States has already carried out nearly 200 airstrikes in the past few weeks, but in Iraq, this, of course, in Syria. I mean, is it fair to say that this marks a very marked upsurge in the number of missile strikes? I mean, are we talking about dozens, possibly hundreds?
It sounds like it is quite a significant upsurge, yes. The kinds of strikes the Americans have been carrying out in Iraq the reports we get are usually a couple of airstrikes at a time against particular targets, a patrol here, a convoy there, that sort of thing. This sounds like a very intense campaign against multiple targets, so it does seem to be an intensifying of the overall military campaign.
That's Barbara Plett-Usher in Washington. Well, let's go live now to northern Iraq, the Kurdish area there. Yolande Nell is in Erbil. Yolande, has there been any official reaction yet from the Kurdistan government?
We're not hearing anything official from here. Of course, in Iraq already there have been about 190 US airstrikes. Here in the north there's cooperation between the US and the Kurdish Peshmerga forces. In other parts of Iraq there's cooperation with the Iraqi security forces. But there had always been these legal questions hanging over what military action could be taken in Syria, where Western countries have made it very clear that they don't want to be part of any coalition with the Assad government. So that's why it makes it extremely important what's just happening. Really a very symbolic moment as the US steps up its offensive against Islamic State, because now we're hearing of 5 Arab countries involved. This is very important for the credibility of the US mission. It had, of course, said that it was getting Arab countries to sign up to the coalition, but there had been no real evidence of what they were prepared to do. This means that the US is not playing so much into the Sunni-Shia divide that exists in the region. And also, it's very significant because you have the UN General Assembly speeches by world leaders coming up in the next few days. Islamic State is one of the threats that they're really going to be addressing. And we know already that the US Secretary of State, John Kerry, arrived in New York at the weekend. He's been having a lot of meetings with Arab leaders there, as well as European allies, to decide on action that can be taken.
Are people there, the authorities there, happy to see those Arab countries taking part in these airstrikes?
It's seen as being extremely important to the credibility of the mission. As Barbara Plett was saying, we don't know what role they would have been performing, but really it's extremely symbolically significant.
And just tell us, in terms of the effort to bolster those Peshmerga forces, what's been happening with that? Because although America has said that it won't put troops on the ground, it is relying quite heavily, isn't it, on those Kurdish forces to take the fight to Islamic State?
Well, that's right. We've seen that repeatedly in the last few days, not far from us here in Erbil. We've seen US fighter planes, also drones involved in missions where there are the Kurdish Peshmerga forces taking on Islamic State on the ground, trying to push them back. Now, they control this huge swathe of territory across Syria and northern Iraq, have been trying to expand that. Really, the sort of support that the Peshmerga are getting comes in terms of military training that's being provided. Also, other countries have been sending in non-combat equipment, really partly to support the morale of the Kurdish forces, to show that they do have wide international support, at the same time as giving them this extra cover in terms of airstrikes.
Yolan, many thanks. That was the BBC's Yolan Nell on the line there from Erbil in northern Iraq. Well, John Garamendi is a Democratic congressman. He sits on the Armed Services Committee. I spoke to him a little earlier on the line from Sacramento in California.
Well, we had a very clear signal that this was coming. Earlier in the week, or actually last week now, we had a hearing with Secretary Hagel and one of the top generals, the planning general and the Joint Chief of Staff. And it was very clear from his testimony that this was coming. We didn't know when. I wouldn't expect that we would have been told exactly when or how, but he was very, very clear that this was in process. And all they were waiting for was the signature and go-ahead from the president.
Was there anything in particular that may have moved it forward? And I'm just thinking about, for example, what we were seeing yesterday, which was a huge influx of refugees from northern Syria into Turkey because of an advance by Islamic State militants. Could that have, as I say, pushed things forward?
Well, it probably had something to do with it, but I think what's going on in New York tomorrow is even more important. The president's going to be the chair of the Security Council tomorrow. And clearly, this is going to be one of the issues. He'll certainly bring it up. Others will. And I think the fact that there appears to be the active engagement of several Gulf state air forces will be an important factor. I think that's probably more to do with it than the refugees.
Important factor, why?
Well, because of the effort that's been made to rally the countries in that region and also rally Europe, the NATO countries specifically, around the strategy of isolating and eventually doing away with ISIL. So I think all of that is very much in play, and that's going to play out I say tomorrow. I'm in California, but it's really today for you in London.
Is it just symbolic, the involvement of those Arab states, or is it a genuine contribution? But even if it is symbolic, how important is that?
Well, I think the symbolism is certainly there. How important it is, I think it's extremely important. This fight cannot be an American fight. And frankly, it cannot be a European fight. It's got to be the Muslim countries taking on this radical bunch and doing away with them. If it's done by Europeans or the United States, it's not going to work well. We've seen that over the 10 years in Iraq, and we've seen a lot of that in Afghanistan, where it is not appreciated, and it actually becomes a rallying cry for the more radical jihadists. So it's very, very important. As to how much they are doing, I don't know. I suppose we will certainly find out in the days ahead. But even one airplane dropping one bomb is more than symbolism on the receiver of that bomb.